I want to tell you why talking to an insurance company before you've talked to a personal injury lawyer is a risky move. I've said in another video, and I can't tell you how many people in my office are probably tired of me saying it, but when you talk to an insurance adjuster, it's like being in that relationship with somebody who is always going to use your words against you later when you least suspect it. Everybody's had that person in their life before where you say something and then 6 months later, it's thrown at you way out of context, and you know they're intentionally twisting it for their own benefit and to your detriment. When you give a recorded statement after a wreck, you are talking to someone who is trained on how to take that statement. And you yourself are not trained on how to give answers that help you in pursuing your injury claim and making sure you get the compensation you deserve. When these insurance companies are taking a recorded statement, here's what they're doing. They're papering their file to make sure they can document everything they did to minimize the value of your claim. They don't view you as a human being that they're trying to seek to make better or put back in the position they were in before a wreck. They view you as cutting into their bottom line, and they're going to make sure they're going to do everything they can to minimize what's paid out so they can maximize their profit. And so when you get that friendly call from the insurance adjuster, there's a hidden agenda there. They say it's a phone call to ask you about the wreck. They say it's a phone call to see how you're doing. But really, it's a phone call to go ahead and before you even know fully how injured you are, to torpedo your claim. I've been in car wrecks. I've been in car wrecks. Family members have been in car wrecks. Thousands of my clients obviously have been in car wrecks over the years. And I can tell you something, for most people, they don't know how injured they are until a week or two after a wreck. That first day you've got adrenaline going. Day 2 and 3, it may just feel like a sore neck because you have inflammation. And then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, you have radiating pain going down your leg or going through your shoulder or arm. And you get an MRI done, and man, you've got a herniated disc and you didn't know, and it's caused by the wreck. If you give a recorded statement a couple, 3 days after a wreck, and you tell that adjuster because you're from East Texas and you're nice, or you're from West Texas and you're super tough, and you say, yeah, I'm doing fine, that adjuster is going to have that recorded in the claim notes. They're going to have that audio recording. They're going to have a transcript of it. When we file a lawsuit on that case 6 months or a year later, some lawyer is going to show that to you in a deposition. They're going to print it out. They're going to put it right in front of you at a conference table. They're going to ask you, if you're hurt, why did you tell somebody 3 days after this wreck that you were doing okay? At this point in your life, you're a year removed from that phone conversation. You're a year removed from just being nice to some stranger on the phone like your mom and dad taught you to be. You're a year removed from thinking that you'd get over it in a couple of weeks because you've gotten over every other injury in your life in a couple of weeks. You've had a surgery, you've been recovering, and now just some lawyer you've never met before from Dallas or Houston or one of these big cities. I call them tall building lawyers. One of these tall building lawyers is coming to you for an insurance company. And he's dinging you on something you said to be nice to somebody a year and a half ago. That can all be avoided if you're wise and prudent up front. When that insurance adjuster calls and says, I want to take a recorded statement, don't fall for it. That is not there for your benefit. It's there for their benefit. Now, something my clients have always told me if they've given a recorded statement, and by the way, I should say, if you've given a recorded statement, you can still call me if you are in a wreck. I'm just telling you, if you have been in a wreck, or if you haven't been in a wreck yet, you haven't given that recorded statement, don't do it. But I can't tell you how many times somebody's come into my office and said, I gave that recorded statement. I'm showing the transcript of whatever was said. They were really nice. I'm sure they were really nice. I used to do work for insurance companies years ago, and I've seen some of the claims manuals. And one of the claims manuals for one of those insurance companies said this. It was an instruction to one of those frontline adjusters. It said the following 2 words: express empathy. They're trained on how to appear empathetic. That's not Mother Teresa calling you. This is not somebody engaged in some charitable activity calling you to check on you and put you on the meal train from the local community center. That's not what it is. That's somebody who's been trained on how to display that they're empathetic, whether or not they really are. Who knows? But they're not doing it just to be nice. They're doing it because it's their job to appear nice. So they're not on your side no matter how nice or empathetic they may seem. One thing that happens after you give a recorded statement, if you do, is that you'll get a quick settlement offer. If they know that their insured is at fault, that insurance company puts a reserve on your claim, okay? And they allot a certain amount of money and have to report it to some regulator as a risk. And so that's how they view you, as a risk. And so they'll make you a lowball settlement offer to try to minimize that risk. And so you'll get a call. Here's $1,000. Here's $2,000. Last year, I had these two young ladies come into my office. They'd been in a wreck. The wreck was in Corsicana. And they were on their way from Tyler to Austin. This lady pulled out in front of them, caused a wreck. And they came in, and one of them had their dad with them, actually. She was over 18, but she had her dad. And the insurance company had offered them each $2,500. $2,500. They said, we'll pay your medical bills, which, I mean, I don't even fully believe they would have done that. But they said they would pay their medical bills and give them $2,500 a piece. Now, they come in, they ask, well, they want to risk that $2,500. And I just told them, I said, listen, I've been doing this a long time. I could get you more than $2,500 each today if I just called and threatened to be hired by you. I could do it, because that's a low ball offer. They're just trying to get rid of you. It's a big wreck. 6 months later, we got policy limits of $50,000 on one of those clients. The other one we settled for $30,000 or $35,000. She wasn't hurt as bad. And we were able to put way more in their pocket than that initial $2,500 a piece. Why? Patience and wisdom. Know how to work the case up. I know how to work those cases up. I encouraged them to get the treatment they needed and just assured them that, hey, it's all going to be okay. That $2,500 lowball offer, hey, that's still going to be there. It turns out an insurance company is always willing to pay you very little. They're not going to come to the point where, like, we just don't want to pay you very little anymore. It's not going to happen, okay? I mean, it's rare exception. I mean, okay, if you got, like, arrested for meth possession and you're in prison, yeah, okay. Maybe they pull the offer. But if you're like these nice two ladies who were in my office, that's not going to happen. And so we settled the case and put a lot of money in their pocket. Why? Because we knew to encourage them to reject a lowball settlement offer, how to work the case up, and how to speak the language of the insurance company in such a way to make them understand the risk that they really had.